Hey there, I'm Sully, and welcome back to the Gun Club. Now, as we're going to start talking today a little bit about what we call common sense gun laws, and we hear a lot of talk about common sense gun laws or common sense gun control, and I always kind of wonder what exactly makes something common sense or not common sense. We hear a lot of times in some of the public forums and stuff. Well, what's it going to take for common sense gun reform or common sense? So we're going to explore some of the common sense or different things that are proposed and discussed, some of the different laws that are out there, and if they work or don't work. Personally, I'm not a big fan on any kind of, crazy restrictions. I understand that people are concerned about crime and they're concerned about gun crime. I get every bit of that. However, that being said, you can't put a law in just because it makes you feel good. That's not going to work. You know, I agree that many people will point out the fact that, pretty much every gun law flies in the face of shall not be infringed. True. Understand that. However, there are certain, basic, simple, common sense restrictions that may or may not be able to make sense, that we may be able to do something to make the world a little bit safer place. I'd love to see it. On the other side of that coin, we can look at some of these and we'll decide if they're going to be any good or not. Before we dig in too far on those, though, I'm going to talk about something a little bit important: coffee. As always, I want to thank Coffee Brand Coffee, one of our favorite sponsors, for putting up for us. And as always, they've got their amazing coffee, tea, cocoa, their cold brew bags, their K-Cups. We go through their coffee pretty much like crazy around here. You got a promo code there, Valor SDS. You get 5% off on your orders. I know they have discontinued a couple of their holiday blends, now that the Christmas holidays are over, but they're still going to have all sorts of goodies on there. Check out their websites. Check out their reviews. They've got countless 5-star reviews on all these products. And like I said, I love them. They're high quality, very fresh, very good coffee. So definitely got to go with that. So now let's play with common sense gun laws. The first question we have to ask yourself is, does simply calling something common sense make it common sense? Or is it using a term just tossed in to try to convince people the proposals are founded in common sense? You go back a couple of videos ago when we were talking about some of the dumbest gun control quotes or dumbest gun quotes, you can see that some of the people who are coming out with these common sense laws don't know much about guns. They actually know very little about guns. So we're going to now say that, oh, they're the arbiter of what common sense is. They can define what common sense is. If we applied some of this common sense to anything besides firearms, it would be bordering on insanity, folks. And we'll talk about some of the things that people always bring up. One thing that's very controversial that we hear a lot about these days is what we call red flag laws, or ERPOs. Technically, they're called extreme risk protective orders. In theory, what this does is allow the police or the courts to disarm people who are considered either dangerous or mentally unwell, unstable individuals. Now, as a firearms owner, I can honestly say I don't know any honest firearms owner would really say they want mentally ill people to have firearms. Nobody wants that. That's not a goal of anybody. Of course, we get accused of it and we get vilified with it, but there's already laws in place. People who have actually been lawfully adjudicated by a court or other authority as being mentally defective, either due to a finding of insanity or lack of mental capacity, they're already unable to purchase or possess firearms. They actually have to go through a court and get cleared to do so. To get their rights back after they've been adjudicated mentally defective, they've got to go back. But this is people who have been through a court process, who have been through a procedure, who have had a chance to, go out there and testify on their own behalf. But red flag laws are different. Red flag laws, basically, depending on which state it is, and they're all slightly different. Some states have them, about 20, 25 states have them. Somewhere along the line, someone thinks that an individual is dangerous or mentally deranged, and thus reports them to law enforcement or the court system. Now, this person in some cases would be a family member, in some cases could be a coworker, could be a teacher at school, could be all sorts of people, depending on, again, how that specific state law is written. Then this goes out and law enforcement goes to the person's house to confiscate their guns. Typically, it's an unannounced visit. So, if your neighbor or your kid's teacher thinks that you are dangerous, or one of your coworkers thinks that you're dangerous, the police will show up at your house to confiscate your property. That's a little bit of a problem there on a lot of levels as far as constitutional law goes. But again, if it saves just one life, we should trample on people's rights? Maybe not. Now, this basically means that you are guilty until proven innocent, based on solely an allegation from someone who may or may not even know what they're talking about. You have law enforcement confiscating your property. Now, once this has happened, you're then what I would consider a victim of the system. And at that point, a victim needs to bear the cost and expense to prove the allegations are unfounded. So you have to prove that you're not dangerous or you're not mentally deranged. Any legal costs or court costs to do that, well, they're borne by you. So now the government has confiscated your property, or the state or the sheriff's department has confiscated your property, and you now have to get an attorney to get your property back. Of course, you could just sign it over to them, and then you wouldn't have to go through that expense. Do you have $10,000 or $20,000 to get your property back to retain an attorney? Because if you don't, the government just take your property and it's theirs. And because of someone made a statement. And again, depending on how the laws are written, who's able to do this is wide open in various states. Now, these laws, when you think about applying that to anything else, I mean, we'd never apply that to anything else. Imagine applying it to, let's say cars. Let's try ERPO for cars. You know anyone that you think is a bad driver? Do you think they're dangerous? Well, just call up, report them to the police, and the police could go to their house and confiscate their vehicles and their driver's license, and it would be up to them to hire an attorney and go to court to prove they can have their property back. Is this common sense? Or is this overreach? Now you think about it again. This person may or may not be a bad driver. We don't know. They may be the worst driver in the world. They may drive drunk home from the club every night. They may text and drive. They may speed recklessly. On the other side of that coin, is it, up to the police to take their property away? Now, if they've had tickets and accidents, then maybe yes, they can have their driver's license taken away or have a vehicle impounded. But that requires they've actually done something and been convicted of something, not just somebody called up and sent the police to their house. We talk about how people get swatted and red flagged and things like that. This is not common sense. This is overreach. And again, nobody out there is saying we want mentally ill people having firearms, but on the other side of that coin, trying to provide for safety or prevent mentally ill people from getting firearms doesn't justify trampling all over the rights of everyone else. Now, how about this one? We hear magazine limit arguments all the time, so that's just common sense. Why does anyone need more than, say, 10 rounds, or 12, or 15, or whatever the case may be? Now, this argument's been used in a lot of states to limit magazine capacities. Every state now has a lot of different limits. There's about, again, 20 states or so that have different limits in. As a result, a gun that may be perfectly legal for someone to own, possess, and carry in West Virginia may be illegal in Virginia or Maryland. It could be a felony just to own that gun there, not even carrying it. For example, if you happen to go to New Jersey, even if you just have an empty 30-round magazine, no bullets, no gun, an empty 30-round magazine that happens to fall out of your range bag in the trunk of your car, guess what? You could go to jail for that, because that's a high-capacity magazine. It's not loaded, it's not installed in the gun, you have no gun, but they're so concerned about these magazines. Now, what's the limit? How many bullets do you need? Who knows how many bullets you may need or may not need? So imagine we had this common sense limit. Well, no one needs more than this. No one needs more than that. Well, let's play with this. And again, let's apply it to cars and see how people would think about it if we applied it to cars. We take the highest speed limit in the United States is 80 in any state. Many states have a maximum speed limit that's even lower than that. So based on this common sense, no one would need a vehicle that can go over 80 miles an hour. Do you own a vehicle that goes over 80 miles an hour? Well, no one needs anything that goes that fast. As a matter of fact, if you live in a state such as where I live, that the maximum speed is 70, no one needs a vehicle that would go over 70. But let's say your vehicle could go 80 or 90 or 100. Well, maybe we need to do something about that. You know, I own magazines that are 30-round magazines. If we put a magazine ban in, I'd have to either turn them in or render them down to whatever the ban limit was. So what would happen if you had to turn your car in? That's right. Following the common sense logic, anybody with a vehicle that would go any faster than the maximum speed limit in their state should be required to turn their vehicle into law enforcement and have a governor put on it at their cost. Yes, because that vehicle that you bought that was totally legal that can say has a top speed of around 100, well, you can't have that anymore. You have to get it governed down to 70 miles an hour, and that's it. And it's going to be at your cost. Is this crazy? Would anybody put up with this? It would be the greatest government overreach. Yet again, it'll be preached out there. Well, no one needs to be able to go that fast. Do you need to be able to go 100 miles an hour? You have no reason to do that. So your car should be governed down. Someone will be coming around to confiscate your vehicle shortly. We'd never allow it to apply to cars. We'd never allow red flag laws to apply to driving or to cars. Because driving in vehicles is something we all understand. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there who don't understand firearms and the gun culture. So again, these wonderful proposals they have are overstep and overreach. So looking at these two examples proves just saying that something is going to be common sense, it's not really going to pass for common sense. And many of these common sense ideas that get proposed would likely have little if any effect on gun crime. Let's look at red flag laws. New York State has a red flag law. Didn't stop the Buffalo shooter. Illinois has a red flag law. Doesn't stop what goes on in Chicago basically every weekend. Didn't stop the 4th of July shooting parade. Colorado has a red flag law too. Didn't stop the kid who had previously threatened to blow up the SWAT team from shooting up that club, Colorado Springs, a few weeks ago. Even the states that have the red flag laws, not doing any good. Magazine capacity limits. Well, New York State's got magazine capacity limits. Chicago's got magazine capacity limits. Is it helping? Probably not. LA's got magazine capacity limits. Someone look at the statistics from there. Are these helping? People think that AR-15s and high-capacity magazines and all these things are bad. They're perceived that way because it's what the media's told them. Not because it's true, not because this does any good. You can look at the states that have some of the most crazy gun laws, the most restrictive gun laws, and yet they still have murders. We're not changing culture. We're not changing anything. We're just making things more difficult. The biggest thing we always have to remember about any gun law is gun laws are only going to affect people who choose to obey the law. Murder's already illegal. We've already got laws against that. It's not stopping some of these criminals from shooting stuff up. It's not stopping the muggers. The person who's going to go in to rob the liquor store, or rob the bank, or rob the convenience store, or go into Walmart and hold the cashier at hostage at gunpoint, they don't care about gun laws. They're going to do it anyway. All we do is put more restrictions and more speed bumps on law-abiding citizens because criminals prefer unarmed victims. Alrighty, well, that's all we've got on this. Love to hear what you think. What common sense proposals do you have? I've actually got a couple of proposals I'm going to put out later on as far as things that we could possibly do to limit some of the gun crime. Between now and then, check out our locals community. We've got humor and some articles on there. I try to post current events over there pretty quickly. Our Twitter account's also now up and running. As always, we've got our Rumble channel. And if you have a question, you can feel free to email me anytime. Alrighty, well, thanks a lot. I hope you have a wonderful day. And please, be safe out there, folks. It's crazy. Bye-bye.